comments, again, I totally welcome them. I think the reason I chose what I chose tonight was to try to show some of the connections in the work that I made and how music is really central to much of what I make. So the scale of these works are very, very different. Jeffrey Bean was made after I made Swoon, and Swoon cost $50,000 to shoot the entire feature, and to blow it up to 35 millimeter, it cost, the total budget of Swoon is $250,000, which is a very modest budget feature film. This short film was $250,000. So the difference between Swoon and this was amazing. This was the first crane shot I ever did. This was the first time I had like a big fancy crew. So it's interesting. I think probably the most interesting thing about making the movie was that we recorded no sound at all. So everything you hear in Jeffrey Bean is post-synced. No sound was recorded on set. It was really a liberating way of working with actors because I was able to direct them like you did in silent movies, where I could talk when the camera was running and spontaneously interact with the actors in a way that was really interesting and liberating. I also learned a ton about, those of you who are narrative filmmakers, about like how much storytelling there is when you don't use dialogue. So I thought that was a powerful sort of learning exercise that way. It's obviously very much an homage to silent cinema, and particularly the work of Jean Cocteau, who I'm openly, directly quoting. Just no one thinks I'm sneaky. I'm actually indebted to Jean Cocteau, among other filmmakers. So that's Bean. It's a kind of fascinating thing. I was amazed how willing actors, really known actors. I mean, Marcia Gay Harden at that stage was quite well known, and that she was willing to do this movie there was a script that was such a sort of unusual kind of creative journey. It was really exciting to work in it, right? Every Wandering Cloud it was intended to, when I made it, as the first in a series of works around Oscar Wilde's writing, which I sort of shelved for a while. Now when I look at it again, and I think I should go back to that poem, actually. So stay tuned. I may make more Oscar Wilde-isms. I don't know. That's really what comes to mind when I look at this stuff now. I welcome any comment or question that you might have, or if not that, more drinking.
Tom, I have a quick question about the Jeffrey Bean.
Totally.
What were the parameters, and why did he do it? And then why did you do it?
I mean, it was the most. I've done commercial work, and I've done, like those of you who know my feature work know that all my narrative work has some element of fashion in it. So, Swoon, it was crazy. Swoon played at Lincoln Center, and I got, like, out of the blue on very fancy Cartier stationery, like, very expensive stationery. It's like, oh my God, this stationery is as expensive as my rent. And it was like, Dear Tom Kalin letter. That just said, Dear Tom Kalin, I've seen your movie 6 times, and I would really like to have coffee with you. I don't know if you know who I am, but I'm a fashion designer. My name is Jeffrey Bean. I was like, yes, I know who you are. So I called the number on the stationery. No, man, you can Jeffrey Bean. This is Tom Kalin. Yes, I know who you are. Sure, I'll have coffee with you. So I met him, and instead of saying what I would expect someone like that to say, which is, your movie was so pretty, and I liked how beautiful it was. He said, the first thing he said about Swoon was, your movie was so ruthless and minimal and cold-blooded. And I was like, you're a fashion designer? I was completely amazed. And so there were no parameters. None whatsoever.
So where's the money?
He basically said, how much money do you need to make a film? And I said, well, what kind of film do you want? He said, what kind of film do you want to make? So there was a kind of negotiation back and forth, and I said, I want to make a film that works with actors mostly, not models. I'll include some models if you feel it's important enough for me to have models in it, but I'd rather work with actors. I'd rather work with performers. He said, that's fine. And I said, originally my idea was to do a Chekhov. I wanted to do Chekhov. I wanted to do a dialogue-driven Chekhov adaptation. And he was like, I don't want people to speak. I was like, you don't want people to speak? He said, I don't want people to speak. We'll distract from the clothing. And I was like,
so that's a parameter.
I was like, okay, that was the only parameter. I thought, okay, he doesn't want people to speak. So it took like 3 weeks. And during that period of time, we met frequently, and I was educated in Jeffrey Bean's work, which was, I am interested in fashion, but not schooled in fashion. So it's incredible. I spent, 2 months basically seeing all of his work for 30 years and given total insane access to any of those clothes. I mean, the insurance budget on the movie for clothing was $1 million of insurance. Every piece of wardrobe of those clothes, most of the clothes are between $2,000 and $6,000 for like the simplest dress. So everything had to be signed out by the cast, who were all like, can't I keep this dress? But I don't know, you can't do that. And so the parameter was no dialogue. So then I went and I was like, okay, I see what he wants. He wants narrative is okay, but no speaking. So I went and made a sort of look reel by going back to silent movies. I made like a 7-minute teaser reel appropriating footage from silent movies and making a narrative where it was all constructed by she looks at him, he looks at her, and it's sort of implying story without speaking. I showed him it and I said, this is what I'm going to do, basically. I'm going to tell 3 different stories. Each one's about 10 minutes in length. There's a narrative, and I actually wrote, there's a script that exists for Jeffrey Dean that's very clearly a narrative script that tells the story and has characterization. So we read the script and he looked at the piece and he signed off basically on it. I was super nervous whether actors would be willing to do it. Because I thought, I had all these people I wanted to work with. I knew I loved Vivica Lindfors, was a very well-known Swedish actress who's sort of, of the same generation as Ingrid Bergman. And I knew her work all the way from the 40s and admired her forever. And I wrote her like a, dear Vivica Lindfors, you may not know who I am, but I'm a filmmaker, I want to work with you. And everybody approached it, yes. Like literally instantly said yes, based just on the script itself. That's great. It was really empowering to work that way. I've never, ever, ever had any kind of commercial job, anything like this ever again. And the big regret of my life is that Jeffrey Dean got sick and died of cancer 2000, right before I made Savage Grace. 2005, I think Jeffrey Dean died. And in 1999, he wanted me to make another film for him. But life and logistics didn't allow that to happen. So I just regretted not collaborating with him because he really was an incredibly bold, adventurous person in terms of his thinking, and he collaborated a number of times with dancers and performers as well. It's also interesting, like if you're a fashion person and you follow, like if you know who Albert Oaz is, who's the head of Lanvin, he was the stylist on the shoot. I had like an insanely gifted crew of people. Some of you probably know Ellen Kuris's work, who shot my first feature Swoon and shot Eternal Sunshine on the Spotless Mind and many, many features. This was a film that she shot, as well as the production designer Therese Dupré and Christine Vachon, who I've worked with in my whole career as a producer, produce a film. So I was really blessed with having like incredible team of collaborators. But I think it's a film that's it's like a one-of-a-kind movie in terms of my own work. It's so odd and singular, but I still am very proud of it. I think it stands up actually as a kind of narrative movie that also is a very expressionist kind of movie.
Wake up. They are all in bed. You sleepy bed. Awake.
If I have any tears left, I would cry myself to sleep each night. But I haven't, so I don't. Besides, it is morning that comes twisting and torturing my spirit, not nights of dreamless sleep. Morning, another day. I open the shutters, and I am assailed by the long day, unstretching its arms like a hideous snake.
I was seeing all like, beautiful, delicate evening wear, and I was like, can I put that in daylight, barefoot? He's like, sure, I don't care. And I destroyed clothes on the shoot. He's like, do you need me to make another one for tomorrow? It's like, oh my God, what's going on? This is insane. I mostly wanted to tell something about sort of romantic and erotic obsession. A lot of my work has to deal with sort of obsessive romance or unhealthy obsession between characters. And I want to make a sort of lighter version of that kind of thematic in it. And so it was fairly clear. The first one is very closely modeled on the movie called Flesh and the Devil by Greta Garbo. And in this film I cast the African-American actress is playing the Greta Garbo role. In Flesh and the Devil there's a very famous duel where the two men fight a gun duel over the women they're fighting. And I was like, I just wanted to invert everything where I was like, okay, the women fight the gun duel in my movie instead of the men. And the men are the objectified pretty objects and the women are take what they want sort of thing. The second section is loosely inspired by a movie called Diary of a Lost Girl with Louise Brooks. It's a Pabst movie from the 20s. And there's also this movie called Sawdust and Tinsel, which is not a silent film, but it's a film by Ingmar Bergman, a kind of wacky, insane, brilliant Ingmar Bergman circus movie. I'm sorry, that's the third section. And the second section was directly taken from Cocteau, was this idea of sort of the kind of lyrical poeticism of Cocteau, but also particularly the keyholes and the kind of fetishism of Cocteau, of like looking at people through keyholes and the rest of it. So they came sort of out of touchstones of movies, but I actually thought about character a lot and had backstory and could talk to the actors in the way that you would normally talk to actors. Most of the actors needed to know, who was I, where am I coming from, what are the relationships, all of that kind of normal stuff. It required me to have insight into who the people were. It was interesting. It's interesting to make, you guys all know, many of you are filmmakers. It's like a really liberating thing to work purely behaviorally and figure out how much storytelling can I make without anyone speaking so the audience understands this person's with that person, this person's jealous of that person. The idea of creating motivation and characterization without dialogue is really liberating. And I think it totally made me a stronger filmmaker in my narrative work. I don't know, I just think those of you guys who make things or are filmmakers, it's useful to think about how most of us are told that you're supposed to have a very narrow and prescribed career, like you're supposed to make narrative feature films, and that's all. I have had the most insanely eccentric career. I work collectively, I work individually, I work experimentally on very small movies that cost $500. I make feature films that cost a lot of money. It's all over the place, and I think there's we're in a place in the culture and in the world we live in that I think we have an opportunity to express ourselves lots of different ways. If there's anything I would advocate for, it's that. Is to say that the idea of expressing yourself in a lot of different scales is really empowering.